Alright guys, today is Wednesday, February 1st, 2023, so I've got 15 days to finish my 55 for Starbird show. So yesterday I worked on the back seat stuff, and of course I got to pull it all back out, but I just kind of put it all up in there to check fit and everything and do a video. Anyway, I have to pull those back out because I got to finish the rear side panel. I got to do the armrests at the bottom. And then I got to move on to, then I can put it in there and then I can screw the garnish moldings onto the top. Then I got to move on to the door panels and the front armrests. And then I still have to finish upholstering the passenger side seat back for the front bench seat and a few little touch-up areas, repadding and stuffing of the driver's side seat back and get it put back on. So there's some work to do on upholstery, we'll say. So I got a few things out and I wanted to run through some of this stuff because if any of you guys are planning on doing it the way I did it and you've never done it before, doing the upholstery seat cover sets yourself is not too bad of a job. Take your time, and if you're not happy with it, just keep fooling with it, you know what I mean? So anyway, I wanted to give you the rundown on if you're going to go that direction and another alternative to save a little bit more money. Now, if you buy a complete interior kit for one of these cars, the door panels, the pre-made door panels where you just pretty much put them on, those are about the same price as the seat cover set, and I think that's pretty ridiculous. It's just too much money, in my opinion. You know, when you're on a budget, you got to pinch pennies, and you know, if you spend too much in one area, that's less money you could have spent on something else, you know what I mean? So what I did on this car is I called Ciadella, not a sponsor, let me make that clear. They used to give a discount if you were a try5.com member. So back when I ordered my stuff, I want to say it's 2015, maybe somewhere in there. When I ordered this stuff, I got my discount because I've been a member at try5.com since 2005 or 6. So what I had her do was I had them pre-sew the front and rear seat covers, the rear armrests, the front armrests, and the windlace for the car, because that's all stuff that has to be stitched. They also did me a headliner and matching sun visors. So that takes care of all of everything that I cannot do, but I also ordered on top of that a couple of yards extra of each of the material, the black Alante and the gray straw cloth. That way I can make my own package tray, front door panels, kick panels, and I've got material to upholster my trunk. So anyway, that's just the way I went. I really enjoy upholstering the flat panel stuff. That stuff's kind of easy to me. I feel like if you've never done it before, you'll be surprised at how good it'll turn out. Let's just say that. So, one thing that I learned on this in particular, this is the rear armrest that goes in there on the sides of the rear seat, back on each side of it. This is the rear armrest. Now originally they had a sliding ashtray here, and I cut out sheet metal and I tack welded it in there and ground it smooth because I don't want ashtrays in the car. So this is just going to be completely smooth. So when they sew your armrests here, this is what you get because it's curved. You know what I mean? And then it's, you know, it's big enough to wrap around on the back side to spray glue it on and stuff. Now here's something that you don't read about or see, and this needs done for sure. You will have a ripply mess. So obviously the seam right here, because this is the top, is going to go right across this edge of this rear armrest right here. So what you need to do is take a pair of sharp scissors and cut all this excess material off just above the seam, and be careful not to cut the stitching. So you want to cut all this out. See how this is bunched up? When it's curved, when it gets around here to the curve, it's going to be really bunched up, and you'll be able to see them lumps through that cover. So you need to cut that really close to that stitching on both sides. Cut that off so it doesn't show. Now from the factory, they had original stuff on here. This was like just a thin layer of batting on this, but up here it was pretty thick. And I do have the original in the house. I'll have to go dig it out. But what I am going to do is I'm going to use 1/2 inch sew foam over the whole thing and just wrap the crap out of it all the way around. And that way it ensures it's covered. Now it does have a little ridge right here. So if it didn't have this upper ridge right here, this would be real flimsy and be warped and wavy and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to cut that 1/2 inch sew foam to fit right up to the edge of that. I don't want it to come over this. I'm going to cut it to where it fits right up to that. Now you could cut 1/2 inch sew foam just for that top layer and then 1/4 inch sew foam over the whole thing. You could do that if you wanted to, because that sew foam stuff will squish. But anyway, now one thing I'm going to do on this has a really thick bead in it. I'm just going to take some of that construction board, or I don't know what they call that stuff. You get it just about anywhere, Walmart, Dollar General. It's a stuff like this. Poster board's what I call it. So I'm going to take a few strips of that and cut it, a couple inches wide, and I'm going to spray glue it over the top of this. That way it'll keep anything from, sinking in over time or whatever. There won't be an indent in there. You're probably not going to be able to see it once the seat's in anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and cover that in poster board. That way it just makes it smooth. Then I'm going to foam it. Then I'm going to wrap it. So anyway, it does have a tack strip here on the top. And anyway, so you can staple it on if you want to, but when you wrap your material over it, but I don't know if I will or not. I'll probably just spray glue it and call it a day. That spray glue I'm using is pretty good. Now I'm going to tell you something else about spray glues. Professional upholsteries, they use that stuff and it comes in 5-gallon cans or drums or whatever. The stuff like you normally find at other stores, like there's one that says 77, that stuff ain't worth a flip for longevity. It just seems to me the higher the number, the stronger it is. Now again, I'm an amateur. This is just stuff I've learned through the years. But I get this at my local Lowe's and it's like 20 bucks. It's like just under 20 bucks, I think. But it's high strength 90 and it's 3M. And this stuff, it is good. And especially in the summer, when it's 100 degrees outside and the inside of that car gets really hot temperatures, this stuff's going to stay in place. Probably not going to be as good as the stuff you get in cans or drums and spray out of a gun. But for the amateur DIY guys in a garage, we don't have that stuff. So anyway, that is what I use and I like. Everybody's different. There's going to be somebody that's going to say, oh, well, I don't like that stuff. I like this. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm doing this stuff to my car. This is what I use, okay? But anyway, so that's your rear armrests. And on the front armrests on a Belair, you need to do the same thing. You need to cut that down or it'll show up as wrinkles across that edge. The very first one of those I did, that's what happened. When I got it all on there, the whole thing looked awesome, but it had little bumps all the way around right there because of that excess material. So trim that back. So I will tell you, when you call them and you order your cover set, you do have the option to send in your armrests, your front and rear armrests, and they will do that for another, a little bit more money. But I opted to do it myself. Just the simple fact, I'm not going to learn how to do this stuff unless I do it. All right, I'm going to climb in here and talk about this for a second. So, if you opt to do your door panels yourself, get the seat covers pre-sewn by one of the companies, and then get the extra material and do the door panels yourself, you can buy the boards, the cardboard stuff, already pre-cut from any of the Tri-5 suppliers. So you can order the boards in, and they're pretty cheap. And then you can just foam them up and wrap them and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, if you're going to do the door panels yourself, one thing to pay attention to is do your rears first. Get your rears in there. If you're using stainless original trim, put your rears in first where you want them and get it all mocked up where it's going to be so you'll know where that stainless trim is. And then when you go to make your door panel boards, when you get it all fit up there, don't drill your holes. If you're going to cut out the board yourself, don't drill the holes for your trim yet. Put your door panel on first. Make sure it's in place on the door. Close the door, and then mark where that stainless trim is so you can put your other trim for your door panel up to it evenly. Because sometimes, the cars were mass produced, so the trim didn't perfectly align. So if your you know, picky like that to make sure your stainless aligns, you need to do that yourself. I've never had one line up back when I first started, and I would do, you know, I'd just order the boards from the suppliers. But then I got to where I just cut them out myself. So on the boards in particular, I'll tell you the best way to go is ABS plastic. If you have a plastics company close to you, you can drive to it and buy a 4x8 sheet of 1/8 inch thick ABS plastic. But it's about $150-ish here in Tulsa anyway, because I called last year about a sheet of it. You can make your door panels out of that. It won't ever rot out and it won't ever warp. So that's the best way to go. I'm not going to spend the money on plastic. I'm just going to do mine with boards. Now I will say I have always, up until now, used Masonite. I've always used Masonite. This go around, I went with boards because one of my upholstery books was talking about this type of wood, and I went down to Lowe's and bought a big sheet, and this crap warped like crazy, and it was setting in my house. Now he does say in that one book to, you know, put some kind of sealer on this, like you know, Thompson's water seal or something like that, and make sure you get your edges as well where it can soak in some water or moisture. But I didn't do that because I stored them in the house and thought they'd be fine. But these things warped like nobody's business. Look how warped that is. And it has a big bubble in it down there underneath the rectangle square. So I am not going to use these. These have been spray painting on them and spray gluing on them and everything. So those are pretty much garbage. So I'm going to go down and get Masonite again. Now I learned on my first car that I did door panels in, I did Masonite. And of course the car leaked. It sat outside. I didn't have a carport and I never put it in the shop. So it sat outside in the weather and it rained a lot. And the door panel boards warped. The Masonite warped. But I did not cover them in any kind of coating. So I didn't put any, you know, sealer on them or anything. Had I have done that, it would have probably been okay. But do be sure to get it on the edges as well. So when I do these, I'm going to use Thompson's water seal because I have some of that here somewhere. I hope. I did have some. I think it's in. Alright guys, so I got some of that construction paper stuff. I actually think this was actually out of a Felpro head gasket set, the little piece of separation cardboard in there. But anyway, I've got them cut to where they'll go over these beads. And I rounded the corner so in case it ever tried to lift up, I didn't want any high spot in the foam, which I don't think it would come through it anyway, but I rounded the corners. But anyway, there would be a piece there. This one will butt up to that. And then at the front, there's a hole there. And I've got a little piece cut out, and I pre-bent it to where it's kind of rolled a little bit. And I'm going to spray glue those on there. And then when I foam it, it'll be smooth instead of, you know, having an indent and stuff in it that might show up later. So I just got an old piece of scrap sandpaper here. So I'm just going to kind of scuff up where I want this to go, just so it'll adhere better. A little bit of wax and grease remover there. The factory didn't put anything over it, it was just put over the top. And again, if the back seat's in, you're probably not going to see an indent if it shows up, but I'm actually not 100% sure how much of this actually sticks up above the side of the seat. But I'm not taking a chance. It just took, you know, 10 minutes to cut that stuff out. So let him tack up a little bit. I guess I could pick up my mess from trimming that cardboard. usually have a pretty bad habit of, when I'm working on something, you know, when you're cutting pieces off and trimming something out, I usually just throw it in the floor, and then at the end of the day I gotta clean up a mess. I'm gonna keep this in case I need to put that on something else. And that's it. This stuff's really thin, so when you foam it, you're not going to notice it by the time you foam it and then cover it. If this was really thick, it would protrude through there, but it's not. It'll be fine. Alright, so this is what was on these hardtop armrests from the factory. You've got your cotton batting on top, and then they've got some kind of insulation type crap. Anyway, that went up here across the top, and I mean, that right there is probably a 1/4 inch, and this is probably 1/2 inch, so you're looking at 3/4 of an inch of padding up here. But this cotton is very soft, so it'll squish a little bit. So that's why I'm using 1/2 inch sew foam. But I'm going to take a piece of 1/2 inch sew foam and I'm going to cut it to where it fits in here exactly and spray glue it down. Then I'm going to wrap the whole thing in 1/4 inch sew foam. What I think I might do though is I might pull the back seat bottom out, and I'm going to put this in there, and I'm going to see how tight it is to the seat. It may need 1/2 inch sew foam. It may need to take up some slack. So I'm going to do a mock-up test first. I got the 1/2 inch sew foam piece cut out for the top of this. It's a little long. I'm going to wait till it's on and trim it. The reason is, when I had the sew foam laid out on the table, I turned this upside down on top and I traced it out, and you get a big dip in this, and I didn't want to make it too short, so when this is pushed in and glued down, it's going to make it shorter when it pulls that way when you push down here. So I made it a little long, and then once it's glued on, I'll go back and trim it back off. But I've got it cut to where the foam side is up and the backing side will be what the glue goes to on this. So let it tack up a minute. And then I'm going to 1/2 inch sew foam over this, so when I wrap the whole thing, the sew foam's going to wrap over what I'm putting on here, so it'll soften the edge right here. Instead of cutting foam out and trying to make it perfect, it might have an edge that would show. I want it to have a nice smooth rolled edge. Ashtray delete. I tell you, man, sedans are way easier to upholster than hardtops. Actually, sedan is just straight around, all around an easier car to restore, in my opinion. The weather stripping doesn't have molded ends on it for the doors. Your door panels and rear side panels are just flat. You don't have none of this intricate stuff. The back seats are easier to wrap for when you put your cover on. You don't have the notches in the corners and stuff, so. Okay, well, that is done. So it is sticking out. There's a couple of spots where it's kind of sticking out a little further, so I'm going to take my roll-lock disc across this and just kind of, make sure it's straight. And I'm going to lop this off, and then it's going to be ready to wrap with the 1/2-inch sew foam. Now what I'm going to do is it's pretty much going to wrap the top and the front, but the bottom and the back right here, I'm just cutting it off even. So the only thing that's going to wrap around on the back and on the bottom is just the vinyl itself, because I don't want to have this thing up higher than it needs to be. But okay, well, time to cut it up, I guess. I wish I had some new tent knife blades. I like using a tent knife on upholstery, but I don't have any more blades for it. Okay. And my compressor's about out of air. I'm going to have to, I haven't had it plugged in. There might be enough to smooth this off real quick. Just maybe. Okay. Okay, so I stuck the armrest in here just for mock-up and just placed it up in here. I haven't screwed it in or nothing. And I'm glad I did, because I ran into problem number 1 here. So mock-up is key, man, when you do everything. Now I mocked these up when the car was in bare metal and everything was raw. Everything got pre-fit. Because a lot of the holes had to be welded up and new ones re-drilled and stuff. But anyway, I used just a short piece of convoluted wire loom. This is the old school crap. I've got a bunch of the stuff new that's been in a box for probably 20 years because I don't really care for it. But in this case, I put a piece on here to protect the taillight wiring harness from chafing on this sharp metal up in here. It only goes up in there a little ways. You don't see it in the trunk. I didn't run it all the way out or nothing, but anyway, I put a piece through here and up to, I think, somewhere in here. But anyway, it's protecting the taillight harness. There's also a pinch weld down here on the floor that wiring harness was running across, and I didn't want it to chafe it over time from vibration or whatever. So anyway, I went to put this in there, and this was actually hitting the convoluted tubing. So, or convoluted wire loom. So I ended up notching this bigger to make that fit. Now from the factory, they're just kind of lopped off at an angle, and so I went ahead and notched it a little bit bigger. So I'm glad I mocked it up again, because I had to modify it. That would have sucked having to do that with the vinyl on it. I would have had to pull the vinyl back loose and peel it apart and then cut it. So, man, mock-up sure is nice. Okay, so here is the left rear armrest for the car. I've got a little bit of heat gunning to do, but I'm going to wait until I get the other one done and then heat gun them both at the same time and then get them installed. So this thing turned out pretty nice. Other than a couple little small wrinkles. I got a little bitty one right here in the corner, and then I've got a few little teeny tiny ones right here. I don't even think these are going to be visible when the back seat's in, but when I'm heat gunning that, I'll heat gun this too. But anyway, it turned out really good. It's not lumpy across the seam. It looks really, really nice. It turned out pretty good. Other than it's, I need to clean the vinyl off. Feels like something's on it, but I'm sure it'll clean off. But I'm pretty happy with it. I got to finish the other one, and then I've got to finish one more front armrest. This one's done. I've got a good start on the rear side panel. I've got that one done, which I done like a year ago. This one I need to get the black Alante on and then get the trim put on, and then this piece will be ready to put in the car. I worked on these a little bit last night before I quit for the night. These had me pretty fired up. These are the little metal plates that go on the front seat, the front bench seat. It has a split back. It's so one side can fold forward or the other. These actually go right in between the two seat backs, like right in here. So you really don't see them unless the seat's folded forward. And originally they are upholstered. This is the second piece of Alante I cut out to try to recover these. And I am really struggling with these. These have really odd edges and corners on it. So when I was trying to get it wrapped around there, it had a big bunch up of little indents in the top from the vinyl being, basically when you pull it around, it's kind of overlapping each little section. And you got to pretty much pie cut it because there's too much material for them little bitty areas. So anyway, this is the second piece I cut out to use, and I gave up. I have decided I'm going to sand these down clean. I'm going to wipe these in filler, just a thin coat, go back and block them out because they are pitted. I had blasted these and primed them, but they are pitted. So I'm going to go back and block these out, and then when I primer my hood Sunday, I'm going to primer these pretty heavy and then sand them, and then I'm going to paint them. So these are just going to be painted trim pieces and put on the seat. Now this is the material, this is the Alante, and I am going to paint these the trim black that I used on my core support and inner fenders and a few other things on the car, and this is the reason right here. It almost has about the same sheen to it, so it's close enough, you know what I mean? And the only time you ever see it is when you fold one seat forward, so it doesn't matter to me. But to me, these are pretty high on the difficulty level. To make them perfect, I will say, I'm not going to have little wrinkly edges going up through there. Little bitty ripples is what it looked like when you looked at it from the side. So that is what I'm going to do. And I can tell you this, I spent an hour and a half trying to wrap one of those last night. So I can wipe these with filler and have them blocked out in probably about 10 minutes, both of them, and paint them. Probably put another 10 minutes in them, probably 15, say 30 minutes tops on those, painting them. I'll have that in trying to wrap those. So this way they won't have wrinkly edges and they'll look nice. So I'm gonna do it my way. Thanks for watching.